Hollywood didn't just cancel people, it erased them. One red carpet date got a star escorted out of her own premiere. One whisper killed a Superman deal. One slur forced a man out before he was ready. And one police sting turned a legend into a national punchline. Tonight on Silent Fame, we expose the Lavender Blacklist, the system that punishes truth in silence. Comment the number that hits hardest and subscribe so they don't disappear twice. 1. George Michael. The arrest that tried to turn a legend into a joke. April 7, 1998. Beverly Hills, a public restroom at Will Rogers Memorial Park. The kind of place fame was never supposed to reach. But that night, it did. George Michael, one of the biggest pop stars on the planet, was arrested in an undercover sting for lewd conduct. And here's the cruel part. George had spent years living inside a glass closet. Not officially out, but constantly rumored, constantly watched, the kind of celebrity life where you can headline arenas and still scan a room for danger. One wrong photo, one wrong hand on your shoulder, and your whole career becomes a risk. When the arrest hit, the tabloids didn't report it. They feasted on it. Overnight, a musician became a punchline. George pleaded no contest, paid an $810 fine, and was ordered to do 80 hours of community service. The world expected the classic celebrity script: apologize, disappear, come back clean. But George did something gatekeepers hate. He refused to beg. He refused to pretend he was the only one who needed to change. 6 months later, he dropped Outside. Not a whispered confession, a disco-lit dare. The video turned the crime scene into a dance floor, a restroom glittering with a disco ball, cops flirting, the whole thing asking, who's really indecent here? And when the officer who arrested him sued for $10 million, the case was later dismissed. But even rebellion has a cost. They wanted a repentant headline. He gave them protest pop and paid for that nerve in whispers, jokes, and closed doors. Being free after public humiliation doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like surviving an execution while the crowd keeps laughing. Was George reckless? Or was he forced into danger because society gave queer men no safe place to be human? Drop a 1 if this hit you, and tell us, if the world tried to shame you into silence, would you disappear? Or would you go outside and dance anyway? Subscribe to Silent Fame because the industry loves forgetting and we don't. 2. Montgomery Clift. The most beautiful man in Hollywood, until the closet broke him. Before sensitive leading man was trendy, Monty Clift was already doing it. Soft-eyed, electric, painfully human. But in 1950s Hollywood, beauty came with a contract. Be adored by the public and erased in private. Monty was widely understood to be attracted to men, and the studio era didn't care what was true, only what could be sold. So he lived like a double exposure, one life on screen, another life hidden in the dark. Imagine it. Every interview a performance, every friendship a calculation. You don't just hide love, you hide your voice, your posture, the way your eyes linger. And when you spend years swallowing yourself, something eventually breaks. May 12, 1956. Leaving a party at Elizabeth Taylor's home, Monty crashed his car into a telephone pole. The story that haunted Hollywood afterward is almost too cinematic. Taylor rushing to the wreck, reaching into his mouth, pulling broken teeth from his throat as he choked, saving his life with her bare hand. Some sources recount it as fact. Others note how the legend endures because the image is so unforgettable. Either way, that crash became the before and after of his life, and the blacklist isn't always a memo. Sometimes it's concern. Sometimes it's a producer who suddenly can't risk you. Sometimes it's the way the phone stops ringing. Not all at once, but enough to feel like drowning on dry land. Meanwhile, you're still carrying the closet inside you, heavy as lead, even when nobody can see it. Monty kept working, kept bleeding onto the screen, but his body was running out of places to hide the damage. In 1966, at just 45, he died of a heart attack in New York. Did Hollywood destroy Montgomery Clift? Or did it simply watch him destroy himself after forcing him to live in pieces? Drop a 2 if Monty's story hit your chest. And tell us, do you believe the closet can literally kill? 3. Ellen DeGeneres. The night TV history was made and the hate hit back. When Ellen DeGeneres did the brave thing, the industry didn't clap. It calculated. Days before the episode, she put her face on the line with a Time cover and a national TV interview. No wiggle room, no open secret, just the words everyone feared. April 30th, 1997, the Puppy episode aired. Ellen's character came out on primetime network TV alongside Ellen's real life coming out. It was historic. But in real time, it felt like a siren going off. The script had a code name to keep it secret, because everyone knew what would happen the second the truth leaked. Sponsors would panic, religious groups would mobilize, and executives would start asking the quiet, brutal question, is she worth the risk? Then the threats came. Ellen has said she received death threats, and there was a bomb threat connected to the fallout. Imagine walking into work to do a comedy while security sweeps the building. She was mocked from pulpits and headlines. Ellen DeGeneres became a cruel national punchline. Advertisers threatened to pull out. Some did. Critics debated whether the show was too gay, as if an honest life was something to be toned down in post-production. The show was canceled after one more season, and for a while, the message looked simple. You can be funny, you can be beloved, but if you tell the truth too loud, we'll take the spotlight away. Was the backlash the times, or proof that even success can't protect you when you challenge the machine? Drop a 3 if you remember where you were when this happened, or if you wish you did. And tell us, do you think TV has truly changed, or did it just learn better PR? Subscribe to Silent Fame, because history only survives when we keep saying the names. 4. Rupert Everett. The Cary Grant that Hollywood wouldn't let happen. 1997 should have been his coronation. Rupert Everett walked into my best friend's wedding like a match tossed into gasoline. Sharp, elegant, devastatingly funny. Test audiences loved him so much the studio expanded his part. Overnight, he went from that British guy to the one everyone quoted, the one who stole scenes from the movie's actual stars. And then Hollywood did what it does best. It rewrote the ending for his life. Rupert wasn't an open secret. He was openly gay, years before it was safe, years before it was profitable, and he later said the quiet truth out loud. If you're a young actor thinking of his career, coming out can slam doors you didn't even know existed. Not because you can't act, because executives decide audiences won't believe you. They don't call it discrimination. They call it marketability. They don't say too gay. They say not right for the role. So the offers came, but with strings. The gay best friend, the witty accessory, the sidekick with no love life. Meanwhile, the roles that make legends, romantic leads, action heroes, started drifting toward other faces. What makes Rupert's story sting is the vibe he described around the business. A kind of invisible, straight guard at the door, deciding who gets to be the fantasy. Not openly cruel, just quietly final. And once you feel that door closing, you start editing yourself mid-sentence, rehearsing your own life like it's a scene that can't go wrong. And here's the nastiest part. When Rupert talked about it, he got tagged as difficult. The industry loves a closeted star it can control. It hates a truthful one that refuses to smile through humiliation. Years later, he clarified he wasn't telling people to stay closeted. He was naming the trap. Was Rupert too honest? Or was he just the first to say what everyone knew? Drop a 4 if you think Hollywood punishes truth-tellers more than liars. And tell us, would you trade leading roles for the freedom to stop pretending? In 5, Matt Bomer. Superman screen-tested, then the whisper killed the deal. Picture this. A young Matt Bomer walks into a months-long audition gauntlet for Superman. Not a rumor audition, a real one. Screen tests, meetings, studio smiles that feel like promises. In the story he later told, he'd even signed a 3-picture deal with Warner Bros., and his soap job was cleared out because the industry was preparing to launch him into the stratosphere. And then, nothing. No announcement. No explanation. Just an invisible hand turning the page without him. This is the modern Lavender Blacklist. Not a judge, not a headline, just a risk profile on a conference table. Bomer later said that in that era, something like being gay could still be weaponized against you. He didn't know how, or who, or why. That's what makes it terrifying. You can do everything right and still lose the role because someone decided your private life was complicated. And the darkest part is the deniability. The project changed hands and eventually collapsed, which means nobody ever has to confess what was said in those rooms. But Bomer's point wasn't a neat headline, it was the atmosphere. In the early 2000s, a whisper could travel faster than your talent. Imagine the pressure that creates. You're told to be a fantasy, to sell romance to millions, while your real life has to stay blurred. No public +1. No honest sentence. You don't just hide a partner, you hide your whole nervous system. Every interview becomes a minefield. Every joke becomes a test. And you start wondering if you're auditioning for the role or auditioning for permission to exist. He came out publicly years later and still built a massive career, proof that the risk was never about talent. It was about fear. Did Matt lose Superman? Or did Hollywood lose its chance to prove it had changed? Drop a 5 if you think studios should be ashamed of the roles they steal in whispers. And tell us, if your dream job depended on a lie, would you protect the dream or protect yourself? Subscribe to Silent Fame because the scariest blacklist is the one that leaves no fingerprints. 6. Laura Dern, the ally who got punished like the crime was hers. Laura Dern didn't come out. She didn't make a speech. She didn't ask to be a symbol. She took a job. In 1997, she played Susan, the woman who helps Ellen's character realize she's gay on The Puppy episode, a moment that changed TV history. Laura later said she didn't hesitate, and then the backlash hit like a storm. Here's the part people forget. Laura said she needed a full security detail after it aired. Security. For acting. Not because she played a killer or a villain, but because she played a lesbian with tenderness. She described how roles suddenly stopped being offered. The industry didn't send a letter saying, "You're banned." It just went quiet, like she'd become radioactive overnight. And that's the genius cruelty of the Lavender Blacklist. It punishes the person who comes out, and it punishes the person who stands beside them. Because if Hollywood can make an example out of the ally, it scares the next ally into backing away. It teaches everyone the same lesson. Don't hold her hand on camera. Don't defend her off camera. Don't make the audience think too hard. Imagine the psychological trap. You're proud you did the right thing, but you can't unhear the fear in people's voices. Agents get cautious. Publicists start editing your life. Friends say, lay low. You start learning the old language. Be careful. Be smaller. Don't make it a thing. Except it is a thing, because they made it one. Laura eventually rose again. Awards, prestige films, a full-on career renaissance. But that doesn't erase the years where the business treated her like contamination for doing the human thing. Would you still take the role if you knew it could cost you work and put security at your door? Drop a 6 if you respect what she did. And tell us, do allies get enough credit, or do they get used as shields and then discarded? 7. Lily Tomlin. The cover that could have made history. So she refused to be a product. 1975, Lily Tomlin was exploding into superstardom, sharp, fearless, unstoppable. And then time came knocking with an offer that sounded like a crown, but felt like a trap. They'd put her on the cover if she would come out. Lily said no. Not because she wasn't living her truth, she and writer Jane Wagner were already together, but because she could see the price tag they were trying to staple onto her life. I wasn't going to play their game, she later explained. Here's what people miss. Lily didn't get blacklisted with a memo. She got boxed in with a label before she even had the chance to breathe. In that era, coming out wasn't just brave, it was often career suicide, a one-way ticket to being reduced to the gay comedian instead of a comedian, period. So she made a ruthless choice: protect the work, protect the future, and swallow the part of herself the industry wanted to exploit or punish. That kind of survival isn't glamorous. It's exhausting. It's choosing privacy while the world treats your silence like permission to speculate. It's building a legendary career while keeping your love story half invisible, because you know how quickly Hollywood turns representation into a headline, and then into a weapon. Decades later, after 42 years together, Lily and Jane finally married in a quiet ceremony. No circus, no marketing, just a love that outlasted every era that tried to erase it. Drop a 7 if you think nobody should have to trade love for a career. And tell us, if the biggest magazine in America offered you fame in exchange for your truth, would you take it? 8. Nathan Lane. Everyone laughed. Then Hollywood said he was too gay. Nathan Lane made America laugh until it hurt. The kind of talent that should have unlocked everything: rom-coms, studio comedies, big mainstream roles that print money. And yet, the story he keeps telling is brutal in its simplicity. After The Birdcage proved he could carry a hit, Hollywood still treated him like a problem they didn't want to solve. Because he was gay, and because the industry loves gay men, as long as they're not the lead. Lane has described how terrifying it felt doing press when he wasn't ready to be out publicly, especially in appearance with Oprah. He didn't want his work to turn into a courtroom about his private life. And in one of the most quietly heartbreaking details, he said Robin Williams protected him during that moment, jumping in to shield him when questions veered toward outing. Then comes the part that makes people angry. Lane later said he lost a role in Space Jam and was told it was because he was too gay. Not wrong for the part, not different direction, just too gay. That's the Lavender Blacklist in plain English. You can be celebrated, applauded, even iconic until a straight gatekeeper decides your identity ruins the fantasy they're selling. He eventually came out publicly in 1999 after years of rumors and pressure, but by then the lesson had already been burned into him. The industry doesn't only punish you for being gay, sometimes it punishes you for not hiding well enough. Drop an 8 if this made you mad. Tell us, should casting ever be allowed to police someone's real life? And subscribe to Silent Fame. Because if they did this to a man this talented, Imagine what they did to the ones with no spotlight to protect them. 9. Heche, kicked out of her own premiere for bringing the wrong date. 1997, a studio disaster movie, a red carpet built to sell fantasy. Heche was supposed to smile, pose, and play the perfect leading lady opposite Tommy Lee Jones in Volcano. But behind the scenes, Fox executives allegedly gave her a message that sounded less like PR advice and more like a threat. Don't bring Ellen DeGeneres, or you'll lose your deal. Anne brought Ellen anyway. And this is where the story turns brutal in a way Hollywood loves to deny. Heche later said that night, she and Ellen were ushered out before the movie even ended and told they couldn't go to the after party because the studio feared photos of the film's star holding hands with a woman. Think about that humiliation. You can headline the movie, but you're not allowed to celebrate it. Not because of your acting, not because of box office, because of love. Then came the quieter violence, the part that doesn't make headlines but destroys careers. Heche has repeatedly claimed the stigma cost her a multi-million-dollar studio deal and that she went years without major studio opportunities, what she described as a long drought where the industry treated her like a liability instead of a leading woman. That's the Lavender Blacklist in its cleanest form. No court, no official ban, just doors that stop opening. People suddenly can't see you in roles you were born to play. And the sick irony? Anne didn't lose her talent. She lost Hollywood's comfort. She became a warning sign for every closeted actor watching. This is what happens when you make your truth visible before the world is ready. Drop a 9 if this made you angry, and tell us, was the studio protecting profit or enforcing shame? 10 TR. Night. The slur that forced a man out and still cost him everything. Hollywood loves to preach inclusion after the fact. But in 2006, on the set of Grey's Anatomy, the truth arrived the way it often does in the industry, as collateral damage. Reports surfaced that co-star Isaiah Washington used a homophobic slur during an on-set conflict, news that exploded into a public storm. TR Knight wasn't publicly out at the time. He didn't get to choose a proud announcement, a safe moment, or a joyful timeline. He got shoved into the spotlight by somebody else's rage. Days later, Knight released a statement confirming he was gay, trying to quiet rumors before they swallowed him whole. Read that again. He didn't come out because he wanted headlines. He came out because silence was becoming a weapon aimed at him. And this is the part that always breaks people's hearts. Even when the person who used the slur faced consequences, the one who got hurt, still paid the price in a slower, uglier way. Knight later described a breakdown in communication with the show's leadership, and in 2009, he exited the series. His character, beloved George O'Malley, was killed off in a shocking storyline that fans still argue about to this day. That's a modern blacklist too. Not you're banned, but the environment becomes unlivable. The pressure shifts, the storylines shrink, the room changes temperature, and you start realizing the job that made you famous is also the job that's quietly erasing you. TR's tragedy isn't just about a slur, it's about what it stole. The right to be private, the right to be safe, the right to grow into his career without being turned into a controversy. Drop a 10 if you believe the victim often pays the bigger bill. And tell us, do workplaces truly change? Or do they just learn to hide the damage better? These weren't just careers. They were lives taxed for telling the truth. The Lavender Blacklist didn't always scream. It whispered, stalled phone calls, shrank storylines, and shut doors with a smile. If one story broke you, drop its number and a candle for the ones who paid the price in silence. And subscribe to Silent Fame. Because queer history doesn't end in the dark. We drag it back into the spotlight.